So in this video, we're going to talk about how to add elevations and how to add section views. So initially, when you start a file, you're going to have 4 elevation indicators. You're going to have north, south, east, west, and that's what these little symbols here are. In some cases, when you have like an angled wall for your structure, or if you have multiple structures, you might want to add an additional elevation. So in order to do that, you simply just have to go up to View tab, and then we have our button that kind of looks like a little house in a way. Click on elevation and choose the first option, which is elevation. We're not going to do framing elevation. So once I click that, you're going to see a similar symbol up here, and as you bring it around the outside of your building, you're going to see that the elevation symbol here actually turns so that way it's looking at the closest wall. So in this case, maybe I want an additional elevation looking at my structure from this diagonal wall here at the top. So I just move my mouse out a little bit. If I go too far, it's going to turn. So just be careful that you don't go too far out that it turns. So I'm going to go ahead and click. And then once you place an elevation, if you look in your project browser, you're going to see an additional elevation here. So beyond east, north, south, west, we now have elevation 1A. So when you select an elevation, it doesn't matter which one it is. If you click on the triangle part, so basically like the pointed section here, you're going to see a blue line. This is kind of like the visual perspective, and this dotted blue line here is basically the area in which the visual perspective can see. So in order to see everything of, or at least the entire part of my building, I have to ensure that this visual perspective goes beyond the farthest point of my building. Okay, if it wasn't quite so far, I wouldn't be able to see anything beyond this. So just always kind of rule of thumb, just make sure that that goes beyond the farthest point of your property / building. And then if you select the actual box part of the elevation, there's a couple symbols here. So first off, this blue check mark here is saying that we have an elevation being pointed this direction towards our house or building. If I were to select this box up here, now what it's telling me is over here my elevations, I have elevation 1B. This is B, and I have an elevation pointing this way. However, there is nothing over here, so there's no reason to have an elevation looking this direction. Okay, if for some reason I would go over here to elevation 1B, there's absolutely nothing here because there's no building. If I go to elevation 1A, I can see my building at that angle that that wall was at. So I'm going to jump back to level 1, and same thing, if I were to click on these two, it's going to add an additional elevation view going in that direction. But since there's no buildings or nothing over here that I'm trying to see, there's no purpose in having those check marked. So I'm just going to hit the check mark here. It says, do I want to get rid of it? Yes, because there's nothing over there. Okay. So basically, that's elevations. Elevations you'll see over here in the project browser, and it's just showing you what the outside of the structure or kind of property looks like. In order to create a view on the inside so we can see, let's say, a particular section of a room, we choose section. So again, View tab, section. And kind of similar to the elevation, the first thing we need to do is click and basically show where our viewport or visual perspective is starting. So in this case, I want to look inside this room, so I'm going to click once and then bring it over here and left click. Once you do that, there's a couple of symbols here and some lines. First thing, just like on the elevation, this dotted blue line is showing you your visual perspective. Okay, so if, let's say, the visual perspective is only including this first chair, when I come over here into my project browser, you should have a new section called sections. It says sections, building section. Click on the plus sign, and then if I double click on section 1, I should see a view here, and the only thing I can see is a chair. The reason for that is because the only thing in my viewport here, my visual perspective, is the chair. So if I increase that all the way past my exterior wall and go back into my section 1 view, I can now see the back wall, I can see the windows, and I can see all 3 chairs that were inside of that room. Okay. And then basically lastly, this right here, the two arrows, simply just flips it. So for some reason you wanted to see the other way, you can just click on the arrows and it'll flip it. These two little arrows here that are turning, if you select them, all it's going to do is change the symbol that's at the edge of the blue line. So depending on the purpose of certain section views, you might want to use a specific symbol to represent certain things. And then if you ever want to see what they look like, you just go into the sections over here in your project browser and you can take a look at what it looks like.